Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I made this video for the 6th Project Web English for Business audio. Hello everybody, my name is Natasha and His Royal Highness Prince Bertie the Fox has commanded me to tell you the story of the gingerbread man. It's a story about a little piece of gingerbread who had legs and could run very fast. Once upon a time, there was an old man and an old woman and a little boy. One morning, the old woman met some gingerbread in the shape of a man. She added icing for his hair and clothes and little brown tubes of tongue for his nose and eyes. When he put him in the oven to bake, she said to the little boy, "You watch the gingerbread man while your grandfather and I go out and work in the garden." So the old man and the old woman went out and began to dig potatoes and left the little boy to tend the oven and her start to daydream and didn't watch it all the time. And all of a sudden he heard a noise and he looked up and the oven door popped open and out of the oven jumped, jumped the gingerbread man and went rolling along and over and toward the open door of the house. The little boy ran after him as fast as he could, minute crying out to his grandparents who heard the noise and threw down their spades in the garden and gave scares too. But the gingerbread man outran all three a long way and was soon out of sight while they had to sit down all out of breath on a bank to rest. And when the gingerbread man and by he came to two men digging a well, who looked up for their work and called out, "Where are you going, gingerbread man?" He said, "I fear what outrun and an old man and an old woman and a little boy, and I can outrun you too." Gingerbread Gingerbread also meets a fox who was looking in the corner of the fence. He also meets a bear, a wolf, and he says he successfully defeated an old man, an old woman, a boy, and two well diggers and two track of diggers. The gingerbread said that to the fox at quite close distance and toward the fox, crying. The fox answered as best he could, and nailed the gingerbread man with his hard teeth in the wing of an eye. And that was the story of Nori, the gingerbread man. According to Bertie, this story is not medium, but I feel a little medium. Audio 2. Calling the Grumpy King. Hello, this is Natasha, and I'm dropping by with a juicy piece of gossip about a very grumpy fish who lives on the pond with Prince Bertie the Frog. Now, Betty's been reading the message on Storynory, and he is rather surprised to see that Collins the Cat has a growing fan club. As it happens, Collins been up to rather a lot. It all began a week or so ago when the wicked queen, who turned Bertie into a frog, was taking a walk by the pond in the place gardens. She stopped, she stopped by to have a long walk. a long chat with Collins to get on rather well, you know. Collins asks how her royal witness was doing, and this and she start on ever such a long grumble. Simon Simoned about the little children who were always leaving their toys laying around the throne room and bark at the stupid village who runs up and slobbers overhead even though she doesn't like animals, and above all she complained about the king. He just isn't royal enough. She said he's so disgustingly nice. She's always showing mercy when what's needed is a good bit of old-fashioned punishment. For the wicked queen had turned Collins into a king, and the real king was swimming around at the bottom of the pot. It took Collins a little while to realize what had happened, and just as he was still feeling a little confused, a servant in red livery announced that the lovely Princess Beatrice was about to enter the chamber leading a group of the small and sweetest little girl who lived in the palace. I know you, Princess Beatrice is, said King Collins. It's this fully brains princess that Bertie's always going on about. I bet it's not the lovely at all. I bet she's really snouting and horrible. But when the lovely Princess Beatrice kisses his head, wished him good morning and decide how handsome he was looking that day, Collins droned to himself. Actually, she's not dead after all, and found that his face was smiling back. Smiling felt well rather nice. The little girls who would come with Beatrice were all breaking pink dresses, and they all the pretty little courtesies. Just the Collins realized that the wicked queen was sitting on the throne next to his. She leaned over and sword in his ear. Don't you think those little girls are perfectly revolting? Let me turn them all into tadpoles and send them to eat a green slime in the pot. My dear, said Collins, you can't do that. Children are the future of our kingdom. We're all right then. I suppose you are right, and fortunately the queen slipped her magic wand back into her hand back and told the children to be off to their lesson right away. But later in the morning the chancellor, who was in charge of all the gold and treasure in the kingdom, came to consult with the king. He said he said that they had collected more money they expense it, and he was wondering what they should spend it on. In fact, when the lovely Princess Beatrice has told him that he was looking handsome, she had been telling just a little weightily because, as always, she's overshocked. Collins grew very angry when the people looked at him and started to sputter. What the least you could do is stop catching a stupid football and go back to work and earn some taxes for the tertiary. Audio 3. Tonight on Science Tonight, we're joined by Professor Hilary Twine, who, who works at Yale University and also participates in research on various city-related programs for NASA and private organizations. Many of you will know the city stand for the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, but it doesn't mean we are standing out in our backyard looking for flying saucers in the sky. Scientists do not necessarily believe that there are aliens running around the earth, or for the matter that they are flying about your neighborhood in the silver discs. Whatever therefore, I or my colleagues believe in the classic notion of UFOs is immaterial. What we do all believe in is that there is intelligent life on out there somewhere in our solar system or in another galaxy, and it is that which we seek. Not this makes things a bit clearer. So belief in UFOs is not a prerequisite to be able to do your job. Searching for life on the other planets involved an active stance in the 1960s and 1970s. We were actively putting signals out there trying to fight the other guys. We sent probes into space with message on them, with photos and music from Earth on rudimentary picture discs. We even sent out a map of how to find us. That could be dangerous. This fellow may not be that friendly. There were many who told that. But then in the last 20 or so years, we have taken up a more passive policy. Our publicity since once and many years ago. Something to the effect of if these guys are out there in such great number as many of us believe. Where are they? The universe is a stubbornly longer place, and we have only scanned our galaxy. Really? When you think that there are as many galaxies in the observable universe as there are grains of sand on Earth, it makes you realize we have a lot of real estate to get through yet. I think I would ask how they survive. I mean, referring back to what we were talking about before. How did you get past the stage of being capable, technological speaking, of destroying yourself? Professor Hilary Twine, it's been an entertaining and educational talk this evening. Be sure to come back and tell us if AT does on you. You'll be the first to know. Thanks for having me here tonight. Thank you.